What is going on, everyone? I hope you are all doing well. Today, I wanted to talk to you about a new game which has just come out for the PC, and it is also available for the Xbox One as well as the PS4. And that game is called Vampyr, which is from Dontnod Entertainment, and Focus Interactive is the publisher. Dontnod's previous games, they had worked on Remember Me as well as Life is Strange, which I think kind of explains quite a bit about this game in terms of its combat and also its story and its kind of social interactions and all of that. So I just kind of wanted to give my first impressions on the gameplay, whether or not I think it's worth picking up, and maybe what the game is all about if maybe you're not too sure, and also kind of cover the PC port quality as well of Vampyr here on the PC. The game is $50 on Steam right now if you do want to pick it up. For consoles, if you're wanting to pick up a physical copy of the game, it is going to be $60, so it is a little bit more expensive if you're wanting an actual hard copy of the game on consoles. Now, as far as the actual premise of the game, you are playing as a vampire, as the name would kind of suggest. It's Vampyr, although you're a vampire. Don't know why they didn't just call it Vampire. Kind of goes over my head a bit. But basically, you are playing as a doctor named Jonathan Reed who has turned into a vampire, and it is an action RPG. It's a third-person action RPG game, and since it is an RPG, you do have, you can unlock abilities, you can craft weapon upgrades using a weapon table and things along those lines. So it has all of the elements that you would kind of look for in a role-playing game in that sense, where you can upgrade the character, you got a character tree and all of that. And it definitely fits into that niche if you're looking for an RPG, and if you've just been waiting forever, you know, for a vampire RPG, which I have actually been waiting for that. I've been wanting a vampire RPG for quite a while, because ever since, like, I don't know, since, Interview with a Vampire, ever since that was on film, I've been enamored, you could say, with the vampire genre, and I've wanted to see a really good vampire game. So I had very high hopes for Vampyr coming out, but so far I've had kind of a mixed opinion as far as the actual gameplay is concerned. Now, I guess for the gameplay, you know, it's kind of fitting into a few different genres. It does definitely try to be a Souls-like game in terms of its combat, although I do feel that they kind of failed in that sense, because the combat it's very clunky and it's not very satisfying in any way. And if you go through on Steam and you look through any of the negative reviews, one of the things that kind of stands out most among the vast majority of the reviews is mentioning how poor the combat is in this game, and it really is quite bad. It's not very good at all. So that stands the question is, can it stand well on its own outside of the combat because of other elements of the game? And that's kind of where I fall into the mixed bag, because it does do very well in terms of its social interactions, because you are going to be talking with a lot of NPCs as you're kind of playing as a sort of investigator in this game. It's almost like Sherlock Holmes meets Dark Souls meets Interview with the Vampire. So it's kind of this cross-genre game that is trying to bring all of these together, and whether or not it does it all well, I am of the opinion that maybe it doesn't. It does really well in terms of the Sherlock Holmes aspect of it, where you're doing these investigations, you're going through these different scenes and trying to investigate things and talking to NPCs and trying to figure out what's going on in the world, and without giving away any, really big spoilers, kind of really early on in the game, you're basically becoming a vampire, and you're not really sure exactly what's happening to you, and you're basically trying to get to the bottom of it and figure out why this is happening to you, who is at fault for all of this, and everything that's kind of going on in the world around you. And so that's kind of the investigative part of it, and that is a huge part of the gameplay. It almost feels like that's the primary portion of the gameplay, while combat is kind of a secondary part of the game, and it feels in that way as well in terms of how the developers actually deliver the game, because it feels like the combat was kind of left to the wayside and almost put on as an afterthought, which really is making me struggle to actually enjoy the game, because the combat is just so bad. Now, in terms of the RPG elements, they actually do a really good job with that kind of stuff as well, because you are forced to manage a lot of different areas of the game, not just your character upgrades and things along those lines, but also your social interaction so that you're getting the information that you need, but also kind of managing the different areas of the game that you're in to make sure that you're not, creating too much havoc as a vampire would. You're bleeding out different people in the different cities and the towns and all of that, and trying to, feed your thirst as it would, but at the same time not trying to throw that area into total chaos, which would probably interfere with your ability to complete your quest objectives and things along those lines. So in terms of an RPG, it's kind of hitting on all cylinders, but in a sense it almost feels like there's kind of too much going on, and I don't feel like the game does a good job of explaining exactly what you need to be doing in order to accomplish all of the objectives, unless you're just kind of going from point A to point B. But in that sense, it becomes kind of boring in a way, because it is very linear in that way, because there's not a huge open world that you really are wanting to explore. You're just kind of going from objective to objective and, doing the things that the map and compass is kind of telling you to do. So overall, as far as, gameplay is concerned, I would say that if you are wanting to get into this for the investigation side of it, if like a Sherlock Holmes, type of experience kind of appeals to you, there are actual Sherlock Holmes games out there which are actually quite good, and if that's all you're wanting to go for, then maybe you should look into getting those. But then they've got the vampire aspect, which kind of throws throws a wrench in the gears, as it would. But it's not enough really to kind of make me enjoy this game fully outright, and I'm not sure I would be wanting to pay $50 or $60 for it. I would say for just the gameplay alone, I would say this game was probably worth maybe $20 to $30. I think somewhere around that price point, if you could find it and pick it up, then maybe it would be worth it. As far as the PC port version of the game is concerned, this is running on the Unreal Engine 4, although you really wouldn't know it by looking at the visuals of the game. I guess you could argue that maybe it's part of the art style, but a lot of the textures in the game are really bad. They kind of have this almost like oil painting kind of look to them, which is reminiscent of the first Dishonored game. If you played that at all, it's kind of like that in terms of its art style and all of that. And if that's what they were trying to target, then fair well enough, but it doesn't really seem that way. It just kind of seems like a poorly executed game in the Unreal Engine 4, and it feels like it could have looked a lot better, although the performance is actually really good. It seems to be pretty damn well optimized. I was playing on a GTX 1080 Ti, and I was primarily playing at 3440 by 1440 for my own purposes, but all the gameplay you were seeing in the video was at 1440p, just 2560 by 1440. Now, right out of the box, the game was actually capped at 62 frames per second. So the game is capped right around 60 FPS. If you want to remove the 62 FPS cap, you actually have to do a config tweak on the PC, which is very easy to do, and the game seems to run properly with the frame rate cap removed, in the sense that it's not, the game's world's physics isn't relying on the frame rate or anything like that, so you can very easily remove that. So I'm not really holding it too much against them, but it is an extra step that you're going to have to do if you want to get the game running on, like, say, a high refresh rate display like 144 Hz or 240 Hz. If you want directions on how you can remove the frame rate cap, I'll leave a link down below over to PC Gaming Wiki, and that will kind of walk you through it. But as I said, I was playing on a 1080 Ti, ultra settings, completely maxed out, and the game was running anywhere from 100 to 200 frames per second. So I would say that the game is fairly well optimized in terms of its system utilization and whether or not it's going to be using the full benefit of whatever card you happen to be throwing at it. And, based on the performance that I was seeing, I wouldn't, for someone running, like, let's say, anywhere for a GTX 970 and above on the NVIDIA side and AMD side, anywhere RX 470 and above, you're probably not going to have too much of an issue running this game at high to ultra settings, depending on the resolution, of course. But, on the lower end there with the cards I was mentioning, you're probably looking at like 1080p, possibly 1440p if you're looking somewhere around like a GTX 1060 or an RX 580, and then you can kind of go from there. But the game does seem to be fairly well optimized, and it's just really not that taxing, to be honest. So that's a whole thing there. But ultra-wide support in the game is also not stellar. The actual gameplay is fine. It, adds extra information onto the screen, so the ultra-wide is good in that sense, but the cutscenes in the game are limited to 16 by 9, and they also seem to be somewhat infrequent. There were some parts where I was talking to NPCs where it would fill out the whole display at 21 by 9, but then there were other parts where it would go into a cutscene and it would cut down to 16 by 9, and I would have pillar boxing where there would be black bars on the left and right side of the screen. So ultra-wide support in the game is not perfect. If you're wanting to pick it up for a 21 by 9 display, just be aware that the cutscenes are, for the most part, going to be limited to 16 by 9 with pillar boxing, but the actual gameplay itself runs perfectly fine at 21 by 9, and it's not stretched. It does add extra information onto the screen. But I'm going to go ahead and get on out of here, guys. Please let me know your thoughts on Vampyr down in the comments below if you're going to be picking it up, what your thoughts are on the gameplay, as well as PC port quality. If anything I said one way or the other is going to prevent you from picking it up, or if you are going to pick it up based on what you heard here in this video, I will look forward to that discussion as always. And I will see you guys down in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you're not already. And I will catch you guys tomorrow for another video. Sure.